all for attending this evening. The first thing we're going to do is have a roll call. So
Yes,
we'll
ma'am.
do a roll call for us.
Jim Jarrell,
Here.
Daryl Whitworth, Jeff Lawrence,
Here.
Chris Kaiser, Jill Tabor, here. Tim Dooley,
Here.
Steve Thomas,
Here.
Janice Menking.
Here. All right, we're going to go to number 4, which is a public comments. This is a time when we have a time for anyone who wants to speak on any item that we have here. We also have time for y'all to speak on specific items. But this is a time when you can speak now, or if anyone remotely wants to speak or has turned in any items. Have you had anyone turn in anything they would like to speak?
No, ma'am.
Anyone here would like to speak?
If
during
you
this
can
time?
speak up just a little bit more. that
I'm
would be
sorry.
great.
Are there not any speakers? It's not picking up speakers. Okay. We're not, okay, we're still getting used to this new venue, so thank you for that. Okay. This is the public comment section. You also will have a chance to speak during any of the public sessions that we will be going into, and I'll be discussing the public sessions here in a moment. But if y'all have any other public comments, any public comments you'd like to make at this time, I would entertain that. All right, if not that, we have 3 public hearings this evening that we're going to have. Those public hearings, we will have the applicant speak first about what their applicant is about. And then we will have time for any of y'all to make any comments for or against that application. If you plan on speaking, we'd appreciate you filling out the forms. They were up front so that we have your name for the minutes. And so that we can call on you to speak. If you come down here, we don't have a microphone like we did the other space, but we are streaming live, so we're on YouTube. We have a microphone that's picking up down here, and also it's also getting on the YouTube. So please come down just to the down here and make your comments when I call your name. So if y'all need a form, let us know. There's some up front, or Shelby will have those if y'all would like to speak at those. After we have those comments, we close the public hearing. Then we ask Jason to make his comments, and then the commission starts making their comments, and then we'll make their recommendation. So anybody have any questions on the process? All right, we're going to start public hearing 5A. Request Z2104 by Kevin Spraggins with BEI Consulting Engineers to 1, consider a request to change the future land use plan from employment center to commercial center for approximately 17.461 acres of land out of the Thomas J. Stell survey number 44, abstract number 646, located at 3255 South State Highway 16. 2, consider a request for voluntary annexation, request zoning of commercial C2 for approximately 17.461 acres of the land out of the Thomas J. Stell survey number 44, abstract number 646, located at 3255 South State Highway 16. And 3, consider a request for a conditional use permit to allow land use of campgrounds for approximately 17.461 acres of land out of the Thomas J. Stell survey number 44, abstract number 646, located at 3255 South State Highway 16. I will entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
A motion by Tim, have a second.
Second by Jim.
Second by Jim. Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, Mr. Spraggins. Oh, hi there, you're behind me. Thank you.
Yeah, that's right. I thought I'd use the screen here.
All right,
I
great,
could
thank you.
come sit down or
No, that's
whatever you want.
That's fine.
whatever you want to do. But yes, tonight I have sending to you at this stage, what we're asking for is the annexation and the conditional use and the future land use tonight. Right, Jason?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this tract is out of the city. It's on Highway 16 going out to Kerrville, and it's right across from the airport, as you can see. So the owner of this tract is wanting to do, as is in your packet, is wanting to do a Class A RV resort. So just to let y'all know what the plan is, and this will come up in site plan and in other stages, but just to let you know, I was glad that Jason put this in your packet, because this is the entry corridor narrative that is, it has to go in with site plan approval. So just like we do on 290, now we're on 16, that also follows the corridor guidelines. So this was put together with the owner, myself, and the architect. And so I think it's pretty thorough in what they want to build and what they want to do. And it shows the RVs and the layout, and it talks about the buildings, the amphitheater, the clubhouse, everything they want to do. And so what they want to do with this facility right now, there is no Class A RV resort style facility. So basically, those people move on. They don't come to Fredericksburg, or they have to find some place where they can park at Walmart or something, because these are the $1 million big, 40-foot RVs that need, they need the updated sewer and water and electricity, and then all the stuff. And then you add on to this that you can see from the site plan that's in there, the color site plan that's in there, the different amenities that they want to have, and the you have that in there? It'd just be easier for everyone to see.
Sorry, slow internet.
There you go. So yeah, if you want to, we can just roll through this narrative. In fact, but there's the site plan. It shows the clubhouse. It shows the amphitheater. It shows the pool and the different things that they want to do, and it shows the 146 RV facilities. And so tonight we're talking about conditional use, and we're talking about annexation. And so originally the thought was, well, we'll just like we do with wineries and things like that on 290, we'll just stay in the county, we'll do our public water systems, we'll do that. But we were so close to the city, they said, hey, let's talk to the city and see if they want to look at annexing us and bringing in water and sewer. And so that is the facility, and it's a Class A facility and a resort style where you come in and they have concierge and they help you hook up and they do all these things. So a real Class A facility is what's planned. But as far as the annexation goes, the annexation agreement, basically what we put together is a very clean agreement that says, okay, we get annexed, but we bring our own water and sewer and all our facilities, so they're not asking for any credits or anything on anything. It's a very clean annexation agreement where we say, you annex us up, you give us annexation, you bring us into the city, we get the zoning that y'all feel like that we've talked about that fits, and also fits what y'all want to do as far as the city and expansion. We bring the utilities, and everybody's moves on with the development, and it's a very clean deal. So I feel good about it. Staff feels good about it, and as far as recommending approval, and questions you guys have.
Thank you, Kevin. Is there anyone here who wants to make any comments on this application?
I have a question. Where's the closest Class A resort
Buckhorn.
to here?
Not in Fredericksburg area, maybe Kerrville.
Maybe? So you
Buckhorn.
don't know?
Buckhorn I-10.
I'm just curious where a big fancy $1 million motor home would go if they didn't come to Fredericksburg.
I don't know of any in the years.
Okay.
Where's Buckhorn?
I-10 past, just a little bit past Kerrville, there's one. A big one.
Yes, sir.
Technical question, Kevin, being next to the airport, at the end of the airport, is this in conflict with the airport
Navigation.
navigation?
No, the aerial easements are, by the time you get here, are higher. Yes, if you got into 4-story or something like that, yes, that would be an issue, but that's already been looked at.
Anyone else?
I move we go out of public hearing back into regular session.
A motion by Tim. Do I have
I'll
a second?
second that motion.
Second by Jim. Any other questions? Any other discussion? Excuse me. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, let's go to action item number 6A, discussion, consideration, and recommendation regarding request Z2014. Jason?
Yes, so just a quick recap. Again, this is for an RV park. The applicant did submit an annexation agreement that was approved at council last Monday night. As Kevin said, the annexation agreement is fairly simple. It covers when those services, police, fire, trash will be provided. That's upon completion of the annexation. There's some water and sewer mains that will need to be extended. The applicant's can be doing that at his expense. Roughly about 500 feet from the nearest water main and up to 1,000 on the sewer, kind of depending on the route that they go. So we haven't looked at that yet, haven't gone through engineering, but it is there. The second component that we need to consider is zoning. Before we can do zoning, we need to discuss the future land use plan. So the future land use plan in this area calls for employment center. This is the only area in the city defined as employment center. When you look at that definition, the goal of that area was more for a manufacturing hub. The most relevant zoning district for that would be M1, which is not something you probably want on your entry corridor. So again, this land use was established in 2006. When staff looked at this, that was one of the first issues we saw was we didn't like the MU zoning. So we talked with the applicant. We said if you request commercial, it still allows the RV park with a conditional use permit. We could support that, but we would not support the manufacturing zoning in that area. The applicant agreed. So that's why we are here now for the land use change and the requested zoning of commercial. So staff doesn't have any concerns with that. During the site plan process, as we finalize that, when we go into building and we talk about the pavilion and some of the ancillary structures, at that point, we'll coordinate with the airport to make sure that those elevations and heights are good and meeting their aerial easements. So that's all staff has at this point. But if you have any questions, more detail, I can answer those for you.
So just,
Yes, sir. Mhm.
so this whole project's been floating around for a couple of years at least, probably almost 3. I remember this presentation being made to EDC about 3 years ago. So my question is, with the changes as proposed, including the annexation agreement, does that lock the developer into this? Or what does it give them options to do beside this?
At this point, it would not lock them into it. There's nothing in the annexation agreement. We did not negotiate this as you will do this use only. There's no planned development district for this, so they would be allowed any zoning rights, anything permitted by right under the C2 zoning district. So it could be restaurants, it could be retail if this project were to dissolve at some point.
Okay.
That's why staff felt commercial would be better suited for than the manufacturing. I had one public, if you want.
I have a question. You mentioned MU. Did you mean to say M1?
I'm sorry, yes, M1, yes. Manufacturing one, light manufacturing.
Okay, did anybody look at an MU designation or at a PUD?
No, we did not look at the PUDs or those. We went with just the commercial because that one fit their RV use.
So we're reserving all the MUs for friendship.
We have the first.
Thank you for that.
Anybody else have any questions?
It's going to be called Jason Lutz Lane.
Anybody else have any other questions, comments on this one?
I move we approve it as presented.
I'll second that.
Motion by Tim, second by
That
Jim?
one, I think.
Tim and Jim, y'all are just doing it all. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor, aye. All opposed? All right, motion carries.
Thank you.
That will go to city council.
Sorry.
No.
Yes. So if anybody's interested, this same case will move to the city council on May 17th for consideration.
And then the site plan will come back here. All right, thank you, Kevin. All right. Next item on the agenda is public hearing 5B. Request Z2105 by Whitney Cuff with Mustard Designs to consider a conditional use permit for section 5.400 for condominium residential use on a C1 zone property located at 815 Wellness Court. All good. All right. Entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
I'll make the motion. We open the public hearing.
Motion by Jim,
I'll second.
by Mr. Lawrence. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All right, Whitney? Hey, you are on the front row. All right.
Clients would like to make a quick presentation before I get started with mine.
Okay.
Shelby, I do have a question. I do have a couple of click moments throughout it. Can I drive from your station to talk?
Sure,
or-
of course.
Okay. Just mine might be a little easier to do that way.
Madam Chairman, is there a public hearing before that?
They're gonna start.
Oh, there is, sorry.
Yeah, they're gonna start and then we'll have comments afterwards.
Let me start the slideshow. Thank you, Shelby. Okay, so Commission, we appreciate everybody taking the time today to meet with us on the project. I've got two of our clients here with us, Miss Branch and Mr. See if I can say this right, Selenitis. Selenitis. Sorry, I'm working on it.
Working on it, strict.
They'd like to make a quick comment before I get started.
Thank you all for this opportunity. My name is Stefan Salonitas. I'm here with Lance and Natalia Branch about this condo. My wife Courtney couldn't make it. She's wrangling my three boys back in Houston. So briefly, how did I end up here? Well, my wife and I wanted to buy a second home in Fredericksburg. We've been coming here for a long time. We love this community. And we were looking for a place with particular characteristics that would make it a manageable second home to live in. So looking for things like, how are we going to take care of the lawn? How are we going to, if we come up for the weekend and the trash is taken out on Wednesdays, how are we going to handle that? Situations like that. There's other communities in the Hill Country that have ways of dealing with that. We didn't find it in Fredericksburg. And so we were talking to the Branches about it, and they have a similar story. So I'll let Natalia tell her part of it.
Yes, thank you for letting us talk to you today. My name is Natalia Branch, and Lance is my husband. And so how kind of we came about with this project. Courtney, Stefan's wife, and I have known each other for 15 years when we both started at Shell as new graduates. And fast forward 15 years later, we now have 5 kids between us, as you can see. So their ages 1 to 14. And we share a passion for getting together with friends and family, just enjoying good food, good wine. And for us, we lived in the Netherlands for a few years with Shell. And we lived in a small town. And there, everybody knew everybody in that community. You could walk to a main street where you could go grocery shopping, go to have dinner at a restaurant. And when we moved back to the US and we came to Houston, we found that, the city is really big and we kind of really missed that small town feel. When we discovered Fredericksburg, for us, it was kind of just what we missed so much. And we started coming back here and just enjoying lots of different holidays here, restaurants, or wineries. And you can see us going to Dust Beach House, trying gems. So it became our dream to own a second home here. And when we talked with Courtney and Stefan, we kind of realized that we wanted the same thing. And we started looking at buying a home here. And we came a couple of trips, we looked at different houses, and we just weren't finding what we were looking for. And we decided to buy a lot and build. For us, it was important that the house is big enough in order to house the large family gatherings, because all of us come from big families. And we need to be able to bring grandparents and nieces and nephews and kind of all get together, in summer for Christmas. And that was something that we started looking at. When we found a lot at Wellness Court, for us, we just fell in love with it right away, because it has a big and beautiful oak where you can kind of gather around. And it's also close to all of our favorite places around the city. And so it was, we kind of immediately knew that that's what we really wanted.
Yeah, so realizing that we weren't alone and that and looking for this type of place and thinking that the Branches and the Selenitases weren't that unique, we figured if we can't find it, let's see if we can build it. And so that's how we're here. So what we're looking at doing is building a sustainable barn dominium complex. There would be a great second home or a primary residence if somebody wanted to use it that way. Up to 8 units, designed to host weekend getaways, holiday gatherings. You know, just in my immediate family alone, when you count all of the grandkids, my parents' grandkids, there's 20 of us. So it takes a lot of space. Energy efficient, durable homes, gated community with entry gate and gated all the way around, outdoor gathering area with a gazebo. We want to build a community that fits within Fredericksburg, a place that we will look forward to going to, and a place that the city will be proud of.
So I'm going to take over for just a second. I appreciate y'all both for speaking this evening. So just a little bit of an example here of the type and styles of houses that we're talking about putting on this facility. So this is definitely going to be a higher end facility. We definitely, as the clients have noted, this will be their personal home. This is where they're going to bring their families and their guests and want other families to be able to enjoy it in the same manner that they are. So our site is located at the end of the cul-de-sac on Wellness Court. Currently right now, Wellness Court, Windcrest, and then the extension of Post Oak has been added off to the adjacency. Right now, there are 3 medical office buildings that are fronting Windcrest, the current MOB, the most recent MOB, and then we have the assisted living facility off of Post Oak. So we are requesting and will be providing through our site planning process to use the detention area that is off to our west on the site. So we are planning on providing the appropriate documentation in order to be able to use those city services. And we have talked with city engineering about that process. Just to our property south, we have an existing 4-unit multifamily development that's currently built out and is doing great as far as I understand from the clients. And then we have a recently approved additional 4-building, 11-unit multifamily development that is directly to our south that just recently came before the council and commission a few weeks ago. So our request is for an 8-unit, 8-building, kind of 8 individual unit multifamily development with a condo CUP. So our site plan is generally laid out. As you see here, we do have 8 units. They are 2 stories. Hold on just a second, I'm not fancy. There it goes. So we have a single entry off of at the end of the cul-de-sac off of Wellness Court. We are providing a gated entry as well as a fenced perimeter. So that will meet or exceed the current ordinances, but will provide a gated access and privacy to the community. Currently right now, both the condominium complex request as well as the multifamily requirements is currently stated to have 2 spaces per unit. So currently we are in compliance based on the outlines presented with the 16 spaces. But we can also, each driveway is actually designed to accommodate up to 3 vehicles per unit. And the reason is that everybody who's staying in that unit is part of that group or gathering. And so we have the ability to accommodate at this juncture 28 vehicles. So if the council does find that 28 vehicles is not enough, we have proposed an additional 8 vehicles for a total of 36 spaces or 36 units. So as the clients mentioned, we are planning to do an outdoor pavilion and a gathering space around the very large oak tree that's on the property. So we do have outdoor gathering space planned for the opposite side from the parking that we have shown on site. Easement wise on the property, we have a single entry. However, we do have a drainage easement with the neighboring properties that will come across our front entryway. So we'll be coordinating that with appropriate fire access loading and continuation of the drainage easements across the front of the property. And we have reviewed with Reagan George the fire lane and fire requirements for the property as well. So that concludes my presentation. So Shelby, you can come back and take over. I appreciate the council staff.
there anyone here who wants to make comments on this application? Mr. Musselman?
Tom Musselman, I live at 904 Friendship. I'm also on the city council. I'm also a Shell brat. So my father was a geologist for Shell for his entire career, and I worked for Shell for the 4 summers I was there. It's a doodle digger. So the questions that I have is, this is being presented as a condominium project, and there were some questions that that Shelby asked about. Is there an idea that this will ever be an STR project?
Yes.
Okay, so the questions that I have, based upon the site plan, there are 8 units. Units 1, 2, 3 have 7 bedrooms. Okay, assuming that there's 2 people per bedroom, that's 14 people and 7 cars. If you're going at 2 people per car coming in from an STR. So if we look at the whole development, then we have 41 bedrooms that could hold 82 people that we would need to be able to park 41 cars. Now, the reason that I'm raising these issues right now is because the STR problems that we are having in the city of Fredericksburg currently have to do with the use of public streets as parking lots for STRs. So I saw in Whitney's presentation, the question was made to Shelby about parking spaces, multifamily and condominium parking spaces. And it said that the response was the site actually provides 16 parking places. Okay, parking requires only 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit. Well, according to this, each one of these is 1 dwelling unit, and each one is required to only have 2 parking spaces. So if we have a large gathering, we're not going to have enough parking unless the other parking that is unless the Planning and Zoning Commission requires the other parking to be part of this development. So the families aren't going to be here all the time, and it wouldn't make financial sense to not try to utilize the property when they're not here. So therefore, it would seem that the logical way to utilize the property would be to short-term rental it. Okay, and therefore we have the issues of what go along with short-term rental, and one of the big issues is parking. So what I would want suggest that the Planning and Zoning Commission do is look at the parking issue and make that part of your recommendation to the City Council, because we all know what kind of issues short-term rentals are becoming in the community. It seems like a great project. It seems that Wellness Court is becoming more of a multifamily area, when I think the original conception behind this whole development in this area was more medical, but that's all I have. So I'll be glad if you have any questions for me. I'd be glad to answer any questions for you. That's my comment. Thanks.
Good point.
Thank you.
Do you mind if I provide a response to that?
Sure.
Okay, so as I've shown in my site plan, thank you, Shelby, for pulling up our parking. With the spaces we currently have allocated on the site, as I discussed, both stacked spaces as well as the additional spaces, because we do understand and agree that the current ordinance is fairly limiting for what the types of houses that we're trying to do, which is not kind of typical for the types of developments that are happening here. So based on ours, and we're parking about 87% if you consider 1 bedroom to 1 space. So while I don't feel like, in my personal opinion, that we need to provide 1 space per 1 individual bedroom because most people will have family or children or carpool in some other manner, but I would like to point out to the commission that we are providing 87% capacity with the spaces currently shown on our site plan.
Mark?
I'm Mark Cornett. I'm the original developer of the property and I've mowed that about 100 times, so I know every square inch. And it's been since 2006, so this is only 15 years of process. But I think that's an appropriate use. It's ironic because I was looking at something like this about 10 years ago. It didn't make economic sense. But with short-term rentals and what's happening, it is ironic that there's 3 lots that'll have something like this. But I'm supportive of it. Obviously, we're hopefully closing next week. And being that we own the other property on the street is compatible. Maybe on the so-called overflow parking or the extra parking, maybe it does need to be pavement, but maybe it could be something a little softer. We're used to parking on Fredericksburg anyway. But it brings up, Mr. Muslim's comments about short-term rentals. This is probably the way you really should be doing these. Because you should be putting on commercial properties, probably having it in groups. I'm against having short-term rentals throughout the city like we are having, pushing neighborhoods out. Groups, housing on that. So to me, it's just more commercial use, and this is exactly what it should.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I move we go out of public hearing back into regular session.
All right, a motion by Tim,
I'll second it.
second by Jim. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, Jason?
Yes, I think between Tom and the applicants, they covered everything well. I would echo all of the concerns that have been raised. That was an issue that staff had called out quite early in the project is, if these are units, a condominium, so each one of these units may be sold off in the future. That's a long-term viability of the project. So when we looked at that, theoretically, we could see 8 different owners, so they could be short-term rentals the entire time. They could be homes for someone. 7 bedrooms is a little bit unusual than what you see in current development trends. So looking at that and with the thought that they might be STRs, which the current kind of breakdown of those is 2 to sometimes 4 people per bedroom, which don't always carpool. So at some points that can be an issue. So we had some serious concerns about the parking. Ultimately, we could support the project if we can maximize the parking as much as possible. So staff recommended additional parking as shown. I think it's the dark blue, those 8 spaces. When you first come in on the right, we would require those or recommend requiring them. But staff would also like to see opportunities for additional parking to be installed, whether that's to the left of the driveway or if y'all can make it squeeze in some spaces at other places. We do think that the maximum amount of parking should be provided because unfortunately it is a life safety issue. There is a hammerhead at the end, so on-street parking would have to be prohibited so that those fire trucks could get there. So, that's ultimately staff's concern is that we can support the project as long as we can maximize the parking as much as possible.
So you don't consider this to be maximized? You're looking for some more?
How many more do you, how many more spots are you thinking?
Well, I don't want to put a hard number on it. I've been to the site. I don't know as well as Mr. Cornett. And so, obviously there's areas around the trees. You have to protect critical root zones. Is there a possibility to squeeze in some spaces between units 1 and 2? Can you refigure the parking just south of unit 1 to maybe extend further over and then you can pull in some on the other side? I really wanted to leave it open to the designer to maximize as much as possible without painting them into a corner that they had to come back over one short, say we said 20 more and they could only get 19 or we said 10 and they can only get 9. We really didn't want to paint them in a corner. So I think just to maximize that parking, but I definitely think there's opportunities on the left side of the drive. I know Whitney has some concerns on that. So you may want to discuss how much she thinks she can get in on that one.
If you don't mind me coming in, I definitely think So I was wanting to keep a break here, so I don't necessarily, I wouldn't want to recommend adding here just because if you are renting the pavilion, I don't want you feeling like somebody's driving right up and you're gathering with your family. But I think we probably can get a couple of spaces in here. I had also suggested to my clients, possibly at the end of the hammerhead, we could get some head-in spaces. They're a little more difficult to turn around because of the head-in scenario of that. I don't know how the council might support backing on to into that private drive. The other thing, and I have not suggested this to my clients yet, but one of the things that Reagan had talked to me about is if we were to widen a portion of the road beyond the 20-foot to a 26-foot drive aisle, we could actually get parking on one side of the street. So one of the things I thought about suggesting to my clients would be to try to widen this section of road, kind of taking a little from each side of the front sidewalk so we can get some parallel spaces along the entryway. So we could get, a couple of spaces or up to maybe 4 to 5. But again, I want to kind of speak to the council that right now we are at 87% capacity. And based on my conversations with Reagan, right now it is 2 people per bedroom. And that's all he would allow us to accommodate within our site. And so right now I feel like we have provided adequate parking for our facilities.
Whitney, what is the intent of the pavilion? And could you describe
Sure.
the
So,
pavilion?
yeah, so the pavilion is planned to be an open air gathering space. So for example, if they're bringing their families at Thanksgiving or at Christmas or having a family reunion with their families, they can have a place to come and have an outdoor barbecue or a place for gathering and just being able to utilize some common outdoor area. So it is not intended currently to be like an enclosed pavilion at this point, but right now we're still very early in the planning stages. I don't think
Can I
we've got
just add? Yeah, what we envision is that it's only going to be for use by people who would stay there. So it's not at all going to be open to public, but maybe showing movies on the lawn, when weather permits, just kind of something nice like that, because we really like the weather. It's a very mild year round, and there's a very nice outdoor space. So we wanted to be able to utilize that and kind of add some landscaping around it, just so that it just looks nice to them.
Do the properties have any type of yard or not so much?
So they'll have some rear yards, but we're kind of trying to maximize the space that we have. On the north end of the property is some pretty significant slope and grading considerations that we will have to meet, and then we're working with our civil engineers to account for that. But no, it's not necessarily intended that they're going to have large yards for play areas. They also are not intended to be individually fenced at this time, so it's all going to be open kind of communal space as well.
No on-site management. Correct?
Any other questions?
In my conversation with Jason earlier today, it's my understanding that this is a condominium project, which means that each individual unit can be sold in the future as a unit,
Correct.
possibly. Okay.
Yeah, so just
So, so my question is, for unit number 1, if I wanted to buy that, where is my designated parking that I should have with my home?
So that's one of the things that we are in discussions with Jason about. Right now there is no requirement for any kind of a plat or other types of organized documentary processes that go along with that. That's never been requested in the city of Fredericksburg. So the intent is that the closest adjacent parking space is dedicated to that unit.
But you don't own it.
No.
Like in unit 2 and unit 3, I could see where the designated parking spots in pink and blue would belong to the people that own unit 1 and unit 2.
So we've discussed with the clients about signage and other types of identifying features that guide the guests or homeowners at that point as to how parking should be accounted for each unit.
Would a parking drive fit between unit 1 and 2?
So if we were to, as we start to move west on the site, we start to really deal with the topographical changes on the site. So at this time, to limit just additional site infrastructural costs, we've chosen not to place it in the same configuration here. But also because it is a multifamily, its base ordinance is under the multifamily classification. one unit would have to be designated as an accessible unit, in which that unit, because of the ability to provide a better topographical access to the front of the building, would be our accessible unit as well.
So, I didn't follow all of that.
Sorry.
So, no, that's
So,
okay.
no,
So for
so
unit
no, I
one,
would not-
that
I would
space
not
out
prefer
front
to-
would be the designated, because with an STR, you have to have a designated
Yes.
parking space. So you're saying for unit one, that blue square would be its
Yes.
designated.
So that would be the
One.
intent, yes.
Okay.
And so then that has 2 spaces for unit 1. And then,
So that fits two.
yes, that's actually 2 spaces. So
Okay, that's
the-
good to know.
location is
Great.
outlined. So, and these are only listed as 1 because technically under the zoning ordinance, stacked spacing
Oh,
is
that's
not
what the
allowed.
numbers are for.
However, we do have the ability to provide additional parking within the single driveway. But as I mentioned before, we did provide additional parking here to meet just those base numbers that the ordinance requires.
And what is the count of the parking spaces total?
36.
What
With
is
the
your
stacked
maximum
spaces?
parking that you can put on the site?
36 is what's currently shown out of 41 bedrooms.
That's people.
So Jason, how do we word this to encourage or even require additional?
There's 2 ways you can do it. You can pick a flat number and have them hit that if that mean, and they would have to meet that regardless of site constraints. If that meant lowering the units, lowering the bedrooms, doing something to bring down the development density to meet those parking spaces, or you can say, we want to see at least X amount of spaces in this area. Like I said, I know they're showing the pavilion and a tree and green space on that left side. I think there's an ability for at least 8 additional spaces there. So it's really how y'all want to word that, or you can put it through just maximize the parking, but that would require staff to kind of make that
Well, Whitney
call.
referenced 86.9% of a number, and I don't know what that number
Well,
is.
so-
How do we get to 100%?
Well, okay,
And what does that give
so
us?
I took the number of parking spaces we currently have provided versus the number of bedrooms. So
Okay.
right now I can park 86 or 87% of the number of bedrooms, thinking it's 2 people to 1 bedroom, which is what we're being told by Reagan is how he would approve an STR application for our project.
Okay, so we went to the 100% mark. Does that give us how many more additional spaces?
Is that 40 or 41?
That's the
Uh,
question.
So yeah, that would be 5 additional spaces required.
41.
Yeah, I think they ought to be able to find that somewhere, I think.
Or could like the 7-bedroom be brought down to a
That has
5-bedroom?
to be a discussing with my client as far
But
as
to
their-
meet the parking,
Yeah, we could either balance bedroom size or add additional parking. If
Sure.
y'all are going to require 1 space per bedroom, which as the clients have stated, they're bringing kids, they're carpooling, they're doing other things that one vehicle per bedroom is probably the lesser of the 2 versions that the occupied spaces. could be.
They are doing that, but that's not the
That's not
STR customer. The STR customer is a line bus full of 14 women. And that's ideal, by the way, making it that big, but that's what it is.
Yes.
As we know.
It's actually
'cause
not ideal.
Which
I
is
mean-
why I was asking about the pavilion. Have
Yes, sir.
there been any kind of seating counts on the capacity of the pavilion?
No, sir.
But since that's limited to inside rentals only, I guess it really doesn't matter. It's the maximum amount of bedrooms we have, which is 50.
41.
Or 82. So,
Well, what I'm getting at, there's a difference between numbers on a chart.
Yeah.
And the practicality of what the reality is.
exactly. The only thing I see is that this is kind of an enclosed, this is gonna be an operational issue for them more than it becomes an operational issue for us. Because it's an enclosed environment, and the width on the cul-de-sac is only, I'm looking at it, maybe 50 feet, if that. So it's behind.
I mean, the cul-de-sac meets the fire turn radius.
Yeah.
and it's probably not likely that they will all be rented all week at the same time.
Do you mind if the client would like to make an additional comment regarding the condo use?
in the parking considerations.
Right there, so there were some comments about, well, we could sell an individual unit and then you have 8 different owners. It's common, and I would anticipate that in the condo structure, we privately would put rules about you can only have so many cars. I mean, as a homeowner there, I wouldn't want a bunch of cars blocking everything out. So, I mean, I would anticipate that's also.
There may
an
be other
option.
avenues, I guess, to help to assist with parking.
So
So-
like restrictions within the development.
Correct.
For,
Yeah,
like,
the
condo
condo rules
association.
and regulations you buy, you agree that you're gonna submit to
Right.
these rules, and you're never gonna bring more than 4 cars,
Right.
whatever it is. 4 cars per unit.
So, and I think just to clarify on the condo regime is when he said, right now, there is no requirement to plat. They could build all these structures. It wouldn't be until they determined at a future date that they wanted to sell off units. That is what would trigger the subdivision of land according to the local government code. So whether it's meets and bounds, contract for sale, at that point, they would have to come in and have us review those condominium docs. I know it's not something that Fredericksburg has seen a lot of. Maybe one other that I know of, but they're quite detailed. They do dictate common area. They'll show the fire lane will be an easement, all those things. Again, ultimately, from a staff perspective, code enforcement, if they don't handle their parking in an adequate way, yes, it will be internal, but there is an opportunity for spillover into the cul-de-sac if they're bringing extra guests or they're booking at a higher rate. So just because it's gated, we do have some concerns that there may be some spillovers.
Did I hear you right? So as it's currently being proposed and as we currently plan on approving it, they do not have the ability to sell them as individual units?
They don't have to plat until they sell them as individual units.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So they have a plat now, they can go up for construction, do everything that they need to do, pull permits, but once they decide to sell one off, that is the subdivision of land. That's when we trigger the condominium regime.
Are you anticipating any difficulty with the plat as it being proposed for that future use?
I have not seen any of the condo docs. I don't think they've gone that way. From what I see, it's pretty basic. Your fire lane, your driveway will be a common area. Your pavilion will be a common area. They'll have some legal documents that are filed with that to discuss who's doing the use, possibly rental. I think for me, the biggest concern is the parking. So if I buy unit 1 and it's 7 bedrooms, but I only get 2 spaces in front, where my extra spaces go. Like you said, operationally, if they're gone on the weekend and it rents out, unit 4 is the first person who shows up, 1 person parks, unit 5 shows up with 8 people and they park behind them. Now unit 1 can't get out. So I think operationally they have some issues. But from a condo standpoint, as long as they clarify those and put those in, at that point, any issues that arise, if they were to work their way to our office, those would be civil matters and we would not get involved at that point.
Is everybody okay with the 100% ratio? Adding 5 more spaces?
I agree.
Yeah.
I think that's the way to go with the parking issues that we're facing on STRs, just to
Is that
protect it.
doable? I just want to make sure that feels doable. Because I think it's a great project and I don't want the spaces to be like, you
we
can't.
can figure out a way to get it
And like Mark said, it can be soft spots. It can just be,
without.
Now, can you have soft spots with that count on your parking numbers?
it doesn't have to be impervious. It can be.
Because I had been told different in
It
the
does not
past.
have to be a fire lane. Capable material. It could be.
Yeah,
paper, it
Yeah.
could be
So like down at the end of those streets, potentially you could get 2 cars in there.
Yeah, you
So
couldn't
at
do,
each end of the hammerhead, we can get 2 spaces each. So that's 4 right there without having to fight.
Do
And
anything.
I would actually prefer to work in another one on the side where we currently have parking on the entry drive before I started adding any to the other side where we have a communal space. So I do feel like we definitely can. And if that, if that appeases the board to be able to do that, I think it's doable for us.
yeah, ultimately it's on them. If y'all say 100 and they need to reduce their rooms to make that work, or, they decide, well, we want more open space and we'll just lose a unit. I mean, those are the decisions every developer has to make on a site. Obviously we're looking at to make sure that things aren't overdeveloped, and if you can't meet those regs, that's on them to meet them. So
I would like to request a clarification that we would be allowed to use our stack spaces towards that count.
So
Where you're currently using it now, right?
Yes, but per the true letter of the C1 zoning, stack spaces aren't allowed to be counted. So if somebody would, if y'all would consider approving that, we'd like that to be part of the motion, that the stack spaces could be counted towards our total count.
So that was one of the little tricks on this is with the spaces in blue, technically she's meeting the zoning code. If she was trying to do 2 rows of stacked spaces with all of them in there, then we would say, no, that doesn't meet code because you can't do those. So technically she's meeting the code. So if she wants to stack those spaces, that's kind of an option for them. So yes, you can approve that as part of it.
Okay, I'm fine with that. As far as moving cars in and out, that's not anybody's problem but theirs. Yeah.
All right, we're on item 6B.
I lost track of where we were,
Item 6B.
as always.
Time for a motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion, we approve with the addition of the 100% number or 5 more additional spaces.
I second that
I'm
motion.
sorry, 6.
And to allow,
Stack spaces.
And to
And to
allow
allow
stack
stack spaces.
thank you, sir.
And what about the 8 additional spaces and the other 2 as in the recommendations by staff?
I would add the 8 that was shown because the site plan shows them as optional. So yes, include that into your.
See, this is,
Yeah, okay, I lost that page, dude, sorry.
okay.
Staff was recommending spaces on the opposite side, but since your motion was to just meet the 100%, wherever those come from. those are.
Okay.
But we do need to make the motion that those 8 are included.
What he said.
Thank you. I
Got that,
second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Do we have any other discussion? All right, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries. That goes to city council on the 17th. Thank y'all. Right.
I didn't have any idea there was a tree.
There's 3 of them. according to the picture. Thank y'all.
It's 4 or 5.
It
It was
actually.
nice to meet you in
Nice to meet
person.
It's hard to tell. It looks like it's on the next project. So there's 3 in the.
All right, the next item on the agenda is public hearing number 5C. Request Z2106 by Joseph Simmons to 1, consider a land use change from low density residential to medium density residential for property located at 305 North Elk Street and 502 and 506 East Schubert Street. And 2, to consider a zoning change from R1 single family residential to R2 mixed residential for property located at 305 North Elk Street and 502 and 506 East Schubert Street. I will entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
Make that motion, we open the public hearing. A second.
Motion by Jim and a second by Jeff. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All right, you're ready to go.
Oh, well, I just didn't know when I'm the applicant, so.
All right, we are ready for you.
Okay, well, my name's Joe Simmons. You know, I was here before a few months ago. At that time, when I submitted, I'd indicated that the lot owner behind me, which would be the remaining R1 lot on the block, had indicated he wanted to join in the application, but I had not had him, I didn't have him on the application at that time, so I withdrew the application. I visited with them and they agreed to join me on my application along with my neighbor to go from R1 to R2. So I don't want to necessarily regurgitate everything that we talked about last time. The main reasons for this is I have my house particularly is I have a house and 2 cottages and I'm on probably one of the busiest collector streets and intersections in the city that are dealing with collector streets. Sometimes even the cars back up to the driveway, and behind me, which is where you can designate R2 now, is there's 15 cabins back there, which is the windmill project there.
while that is used typically right now for a family compound, obviously in the future at some point, if they want to lease that to short-term rentals or otherwise, it would mean that I'm not only fronting one of the busiest intersections in town, but behind me is basically a compound that could be rented out to multiple individuals and so on and so forth. Also on the east side of L, I've provided some information that shows that really there's only 2 lots remaining that I can tell on the east side of L, all the way from Travis to the south end of L, where it dead ends, where we feel like it establishes a buffer through L, that anything on the east side, there's no yellow on that side, but most of it's all on the east side of L. And also that everything around me pretty much already is being utilized as a bed and breakfast. And my situation, as you might have heard last time, although I'm living in Austin currently, I plan to retire here in Fredericksburg and coming here for a long time. But because I'm a non-resident for some reason in the code that I can't lease to multiple parties, even though I bought the cottages that go with my house. And so, a lot of the people, even, some of the other folks here, even if they're in R1, they can lease to multiple parties, but I'm sort of confined because of the status that I have. And I'm not sure why, because I think that's all it is a homestead declaration of some nature, but in any event, some of the opposition last time talked about traffic, but quite frankly, because of our proximity, the very things why people would rent at the cottages, we're a block away from the Nimitz Museum, we're a block away from Main Street. Most of my guests walk. In addition, if I had a family of 5 there and two of them, the kids, in addition to the parents were drivers, then you would have far more trips per day while they go to work or go to school or go to their jobs or go grocery shopping than you would for the guests that come there, on the weekends or whenever typically they come. So.
All right. Thank you. We'll see if we have any comments.
Okay.
All right. All right. We have several people who have turned in that want to speak. I will pull these as I have them here. I have Karen Hardison.
We institute a limit time.
Yes, and if y'all would limit it up to, it says about 5 minutes.
Okay, so I'm not speaking on this one.
Is that the wrong one? You're on the other one? Okay. I wasn't sure. It didn't have a number on it. All right. Mr. Smith?
All right, first, thanks to all of y'all, because I was on planning and zoning at Chevron Park in San Antonio. I don't remember getting a paycheck, so thank all y'all.
Well, let me tell you something, we don't get one either.
And also, he sent a kind letter, in my opinion, a polite letter inviting us to engage in conversation. I didn't get around to doing it, but thank you. I appreciate that. He's trying to be a good neighbor. I appreciate that. So I come here and protest. And the reason why I want to protest is because back in 2000, when Jim inspected our house, one of the things we looked at was zoning. And settlement at the time, if I recall, was the only thing that was R2. But it was also well established and it didn't seem threatening to us. But we did not want any apartment complexes. We didn't want any large condos around us. So that was a factor in us buying this house at 506. And so we don't want that to change. We want it to stay the way it is, respectfully, sir. And so another thing he says there's not, the traffic won't change. And that may be true. I don't know about that. But did y'all see the video that I shared with Shelly? I sent Shelly a video. Beth and I were on the front porch. And here comes the bubble bus, the big pink bus. And it disgorges about 12 or 14, mostly drunk women into the middle of Travis Street. Cars are going by. At the same time, at the subject house, there was another bus unloading and there's people walking back and forth the street across Elk. And meanwhile, there's 10 cars parked in front of the house across the street from. So the bubble bus is dead in the middle of the street because it can't get it to the curb because of all the cars. Now, their cars were not parked in this. Well, there were a couple of trucks parked in the street on Elk. Luckily, there was no one in our house and one staying in the house next to us. Otherwise, there would have been other 6 or 7 cars on Travis. And so I understand what he's saying. And that day when the 2 buses were along at the same time is rare, but it does happen. And so we just don't appreciate the congestion. We're trying to hold on to our neighborhood, right? So that's why I'm protesting. Let's see. I have 5 short-term rentals around Radine, and I have 5. That's a short-term rental. That's a translation for 14 people party central. Across the street, it's 14 people party central. It's never been too bad at his place, but there's not unusual to have 6 or 7 people here. Right there, and Nay's got 10 or 12 people in their pool. They're in their pool. It's constant noise. We're just trying to hold on to what we got. And so that's the reason why I'm protesting. And then let's see, Les, is there anything else? Nope. I think I hit all my points.
Would you point to where your house is?
Yes, ma'am. My house is, so this is Radine, the lady right here. Ours is right here, 506. Then this is 2 properties that have been expanded into one house. And so they park in front of our house because they can't all fit there because there's a fire hydrant. But when it's a flood zone, I have to tell people to move their cars. The parking for us is in the back. 3 times in the last 6 months, we couldn't get to our house and Radine couldn't get to hers because there's not enough parking back there for 4 cars. So when you got 8 or 10 people bringing their cars, if they don't park in the front, they park in the back, we can't get in and out. So these are some of the issues you face when you got short-term rentals or party central around you. And that's why that's why I'm protesting. And I appreciate all that y'all do. Thank you. I appreciate what you're doing. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
All right, Radine, do you want to say something?
Well, I'm protesting. And my house is 508 East Travis. It is right here, directly across from Park City. I brought notes because I'm blessed by being a junior high and high school teacher, but by this time of day, I'm kind of tired. So I'm not remembering it all. So I need some coaching here. I'm very passionate about this. Again, I'm Radine Borchers. I live at 508 East Travis. I'm very passionate about this. I'm probably going to have a stain when I say I'm one of those locals from way back. All right. So my family are founding fathers of this town, and I'm very proud of this town. I feel like it's my town. I feel like it's my neighborhood and it's been taken away from me. I bought that house 21 years ago. I bought that house because it was on a quiet, beautiful street, Travis. It dead ends on both ends at cemeteries. A very revered street. It was a quiet street, lovely neighbors. But it's undergoing a change now and it's very unpleasant. I'm having weekends with drunken and disorderly people, loud and rowdy to the point of, I got a little grandson who's 4 years old and he's at my house and the windows are all closed. It's a well-insulated house. And the heaters are on and we're awakened in the middle of the night by people who are so loud and rowdy. So what do? You leave a little 4-year-old in bed, wait till midnight, go to the property line and go, please, please, guys, this is a residential area. You even woke us up from a dead sleep. Please be quiet. They're rude. They're hostile. They're unpleasant to the point like, what do you do? My little grandson says, what do you do, Grandma? I said, let's call the police and see what the police said would be the proper thing to do. So we do that. And they said, we're having all these problems, these weekend things. And they said, just keep calling the police. Just keep calling the police. This is awful, guys. This is awful. I think about my grandparents and they were active. You probably know, those of you who are local. And I had a grandfather who was a commissioner. So he would do things in his community like when they couldn't get tires when they're rationed, he had a flatbed truck and he put the football team and the band on the back of a flatbed truck, cover it with a tarp and drive them to Mason or wherever. That's the way it was then, right? I mean, you did for your community and you cared for. And when he was 90, the fire department here in town gave him a barbecue birthday, And my great grandfather was had a cotton gin and a rancher. The other one was a Texas Ranger. My grandma has a common grandparent with Admiral Nimitz. So I have all these things I love about my town. I love my town. hate to be so emotional, but I love my town. You know, I love my neighborhood and we're about to lose it. It is awful, awful, awful. I hate the thought that I'm 72 years old and I'm still working to pay the taxes on a house that's across from Hardyville. I didn't buy into that 21 years old ago when I bought that house. I hate it. The traffic is horrible, potentially can get worse. I hate that it's so loud. I hate that I have no peace on the weekends. This is something that is just very, very unpleasant to me. As he said, we've got noise back here, we've got noise there, we've got noise there. We don't need to exacerbate the problem by encouraging this here. I don't want to pay more taxes to open larger housing areas in front of my property. This is at my front door. My ancestors in this town would have said, keep your drunkenness at home. Keep your bawdiness at home. Don't bring it to my front door. And guys, what's happening is this stuff, all of the chaos, the parties is destroying the neighborhood that was lovely 21 years ago. They're bringing the parties to my front door. And I resent it. And I'm very, very much opposed to this. Sorry. I love my town.
Thank you. Mr. Morrow?
Well, I hate to follow that.
I'm sorry.
No, that was the passion.
It's those old native people, you know?
I've only been here for 10 years, so I think a lot of people know, I'm also protesting. I own 414 and 418 East Schubert. The 418 is across the street from the Kelly's property. I don't want to be repetitive, but I feel like it deserves that in my 5 minutes. That these larger houses, and we've talked about this in several formats here, that they do bring larger, rowdier groups. It's fact. They bring more cars than you guys are thinking about. I think a couple of you know, I've got one across the street from my home that sleeps up to 10. And on 6 different occasions, I've counted 16 cars. 16 cars. Now, to think about it, you know, this is Schubert. Now, I know you know all this. It's one of the old streets. It's really come a long way. And I came here to be buried at the end of the street. Mm-hmm. And it's getting to the point now where you can't even park in front of your house. And that's not the worst of it, you know, because the density will increase. You know, these large houses are drawing more larger groups and then that same rowdy pavement. And I too have been, see, I'm surrounded by B&Bs, which I can live with as long as they live within the parameters of our neighborhood of our city. But that's not happening. And I too have called the police many times, and they're overwhelmed and they're frustrated too. I mean, they're wearing noise meters now, so it's a really common thing. I've been woken up many times by loud music, 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock. I mean, they're just, you know, it's exactly what Nadine was talking about. They're not respectful of our town. So the density issues are going to increase. The traffic, look, Elk's already bad. It's the mini Main Street. The parking will increase. I've lived it. I've seen it. Anyone can say what they want. I see it every weekend. When these large parties come, they don't pack in a car. That's just the way it is. They don't. It could be as little as 6 cars, but it could be as many as 12 cars. Okay? And that doesn't include the visitors during the day. So what I think what Radine was talking about too is this trend. You know, you expect some change in 20 years, but this violent trend in the past 9 years is becoming more and more evident. And people like us, the everyday people, have got to stand up and say, enough's enough. We got to draw this line in the sand and say, we're not letting you come past this way. And also think about it, changing the zoning only benefits these 2 people, these 2 groups. And that's not fair to the rest of us that live there. Okay, so, you know, and I know you guys take that into consideration. And then of course, the you know, as we do the R2, it invades in our space, the neighborhoods are leaving. You know, I mean, I want to stay here. You know, I pay a lot of taxes, I have a lot of property, you know. I don't want to be forced to leave because it's not livable, you know. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else that has any comments?
Some of the comments.
Let me see if there's anyone else that wants to speak first.
I just got a question. How big are the cottages? What kind of buildings are
They, each one has one bedroom. So,
I know party crowds is really just
just a cottage.
What is the main house?
Pardon me?
What is the main house suite?
It's just two cottages and the main house.
And what is the main house sleep? How many?
Oh, and the sleep, well, there's 3 bedrooms. In any event, what I was going to respond is part of the reason that, you know, I'm not necessarily disagreeing with some of the things that they brought up, but I will say that part of the reason I'm bringing this is I have the 2 cottages, and quite frankly, my problem is I'm being encouraged to lease to large groups. I want to lease to smaller groups. I can't use the cottages now unless it's to one single group. So I have to lease the entirety of the property, which means naturally that I have to, you know, I lease to more people. And so that's part of my reason that I'm here, is because this way, just like many of the people that are already in R1 and some of them here that are talking about bed and breakfasts and noise and everything else, they can lease to multiple parties. Whatever the nuances are in the code, I'm somewhat limited to by it. I also don't think they're really facing the intersection of Travis and Elk. I mean, it's not set up for a single family residence that is going to be a family of 4 and with kids running around the front yard because of the traffic that's there. And not, you know, Travis, if you take a right and go down to the cemetery, there's no traffic on that particular street. So, I mean, it's all right there congested for the most part, right on the intersection that I sit on. You know, it's, you know, I don't think the reality is what I'm asking for. It's not like I'm tearing it down to build an apartment complex. I'm asking to be able to utilize my property more effectively. And quite frankly, is to actually, I think it would create less noise. I think it would create less traffic. It would create less, you know, new problems with people, because the smaller groups naturally create smaller problems. So anyway, I mean, that's where I stand on the property. It's.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I have a question for Jason. With the change in zoning to R2, would that allow the property owner to put anything on that piece of property that is allowed in R2, which could be a multifamily apartment?
An R2 zoning would allow multifamily apartments. Yes, sir.
But based on density, I mean, there would be density restrictions.
Yeah, so you need, for 1-bedroom apartment, you need 1,600 square feet of property. For 2-bedroom apartment, you need 2,000 square foot of property, and for 3-bedroom, I believe it's 2,400 square feet. So, thank you. Efficiencies require 2,500, sorry, 1-bedroom, 3,000 square feet, 2-bedroom, 3,500. So you have to have a certain amount of acreage to do an apartment complex. And then you have to factor in the parking as well. So is it possible that property could develop as an apartment complex if it were to change, and even if it were to combine with all 3? Yes, it is. But that density would be very much limited due to the parking and the constraints, but it would be allowed. Yes, sir.
How big could you build on those lots? How much space is there in total?
Total square feet, I believe we were looking at just a little over an acre.
On that one lot, or on
I
all
think
3?
all
If all
3.
3 were to.
I believe it was a little more than that.
Yeah, it's, my lot's 10,000 feet pretty much, or 11,500. The next lot is approximately the same size. So they're pretty much
21 to 22,000 for the two lots, and then the one behind us is 20,000, so it's close to an acre.
Yeah, right at about an acre. So you could get a two-story apartment complex, most likely would be limited 3 or 4 units, depending on the layout, the size, and the parking requirements.
That's also historic, isn't it?
No.
It's not, is out the trail.
It's across the street.
Yeah, it kind of zigzags in and out through that area.
What is the density requirements for his 3-bedroom and 2 cottages? He's only got 10,000 or 11,000 square feet. For R2.
So he has 10,000 square feet. Are you talking under the STR ordinance?
Uh-huh.
So under the STR ordinance, he could rent out one in the back as a separate rental. I think that's where he would be limited. So his options right now are he could live in the main house and rent one of the ones in the back.
Sure.
Or he has to rent all of them as one unit.
Which I thought's not allowed.
But what if
It
we
has to be
convert
under
it?
a roof.
It's under one.
Under one roof.
So really, he can't do that.
No, he would have to pick one, rent one, and one would have to sit. I mean,
Right.
ultimately, that's,
So right now he can only rent one. He can't rent to one big party.
correct.
And then if it's R2, what do the density, like a 3-bedroom requires how much density?
3,500 square feet,
And then a 1-bedroom is 2,500,
3,000.
3,000. So that's 6, but then parking's got to go into that density also. I'm just curious if he could even rent all 3
Not with that
density
one.
I
wise.
can't rent all 3. I can't rent, right now, I'm just renting one, and they can use the cottages as ancillary structures that, you know, but they're not sleeping there.
Sure,
I mean,
okay.
All right, is there anyone else that wants to make any comments?
I'd like to just say one more thing if I could. And that's it. When he bought that house, it was a single family residence. And if you bought it to live in it, it'd be one thing. He's buying it to make money out of it. He's buying it to make it into a business. And that's part of the protest here is that if he can sell that house to someone who wants to live there and go do this somewhere else. What I'm suggesting. I mean, that's a little bit rude, but I'm just saying, if you didn't want to have a single family house, then why did you buy this place?
So I can say my home, 414 is a historic home. It's in, so that's, you know, that's consideration. But I want to spend a lot of money making sure that house looks like it's over 100 years old. And keep it that way.
I bought the house just so I can tell the people why I bought it. I did buy it to live there, but I ended up coming down for 6 years and realized with what was going on right in front of me with that Elk and Travis, that it's probably not set up as the most desirable. I may still live there as a single family resident, but it certainly wasn't attractive in terms of the desirability of it just being solely for a family. So that's why.
All right. I think it's time to close this public hearing.
I'll make a motion. We close the public hearing.
I have a motion by Jim.
I'll second that motion.
Second. All right, any other discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, then let's go to action item number 6C, discuss, consider and recommendation regarding request Z2016. Jason?
Yes. So when staff got the request, one of the first things I did was kind of look through the prior request to see what had changed. So obviously the addition of the new lot took away the instance where we may have a spot zoning that was left over. Now, the next thing that we kind of looked at is what are the development patterns? What are the trends in the area? What is the neighborhood like? So when we looked at that, we did notice the 2 properties across the street on Elk are STRs, as well as the southwestern corner property. So there's multiple STRs in the area. The owner was operating one as an STR. They do have those additional outbuildings that can be utilized as those. And so looking at the long-term growth of the city, cities do grow, they do expand, they do change. Given that there's R2 along the entirety of the remainder of the block and then south, the staff does believe we can support the change to the R2 zoning district. especially given that in light that any type of apartment complex density wise would not be that. I mean, I don't want to say it's not possible, but the economics behind that type of development for such a little small piece of property is very difficult to do. So staff can't support that change in that area. If we were talking about a different block or a different intersection, the next one up, it may be a different story. But given the location, its proximity to the Nimitz, multiple commercial districts, the CBD, that's why staff can support the recommended or the zoning change request at this time.
Jason, thank you for this map, but does that include all the protests that Shelby sent plus those we've gotten tonight?
Yes, the only question I had was for one of the applicants, Mr. Graham, I believe. Are you one of the property owners on there?
He
Is
just
he-
left. I mean, Mr. Morrow?
No, Morris, he was a complainant. He wasn't.
Oh,
Well, we had
His house is on here, Janice and Red.
so we did receive one protest letter via email from, I believe, a Kathy Graham. It was interesting. She was not on our notification list that got mailed out. She did not say where she resides. She just said she's part owner of a property. We could not find any record of that. So I knew the landowner at 502 Elk, his last name was Graham. So my concern was his wife may be protesting the change. I don't know what the situation there was, but that was the only kind of protest that we received that we couldn't identify as where they lived or where they came from.
so these tonight are already on.
Yes, ma'am. I did do the calculation on this map based on this protest map. The protest properties are in red. It equates to about 14% of the notification area. 20% is the trigger. Council would have to have a supermajority for any type of approval.
So
Yes, if y'all have more questions, I'll be glad to answer those.
So if this was turned into R2 and this particular property, he could only rent the one extra cottage, but it would also require him to provide additional on-site parking, correct?
You would have to provide the parking. I believe if this was an R2, we'd have to do the calculations to see the density to make sure that he can make that work. I believe he might be able to redo all three. Do you
He
think so?
would be allowed to rent all 3 units.
If he can make the parking.
Including, and keeping in mind the occupancy of the main house,
Mhm.
and then the occupancy for each 1-bedroom cottage.
But he would be required to add an additional on-site parking for each cottage, correct?
The current STR ordinance requires one parking space per unit.
unit.
So he would have to provide 3 parking spaces for 3 STR units.
And how many
On-site.
does he have now currently on site?
Well, he has 3 units, but what he's doing currently is 3 units, and he's renting them as one.
Sure.
Which he was noticed as a violation, and he's not allowed to do that. And he's aware of that now, and that's what triggered this process that y'all saw the first time several months back. So what he's doing right now is rent the main house as a unit.
How much parking?
I believe
One
he
parking space.
one
He only has
space.
one on the whole.
No, there's a bigger.
So
Yeah.
he could probably get more, but he's
Yeah,
only
he
required
has
as one.
he has a
Did they think we
parking
were done?
area that could probably be
They thought we were
configured to
done.
meet the regs.
Okay.
We haven't seen any site plan on that.
Gotcha.
But there's,
Yeah,
I
there's an-
want to say I've seen at least 4 vehicles on site at one point. They're right up against the units and then behind the house.
Because it's pretty built up. There's not a whole lot of.
There's not a lot, but there is a little area there. And so ultimately, if he came through the process, through the permitting process, that would be something we would review. He would have to provide a site plan showing he can meet those minimum regs.
So I understand the concerns from neighbors. When I look at this, changing this to R2 doesn't necessarily change the parking situation happening in this area with the larger houses. Like the parking is a problem for the R1 houses, but changing something to R2 actually requires more on-site parking. And in this particular situation, I think I'm trying to, I understand the opposition with the neighborhood, but I don't necessarily think changing this to R2 is, or not changing it to R2 is going to solve the parking problem with the larger houses that require one parking space.
That was some of the thought process behind us. The use is established. It's being done, the area, the use is established all around it. There's no question parking is an issue, whether it's STR or just overflow from Main Street. I mean, you can see that all up and down. Ultimately, the increase in density for him is not that much as far as what he can rent out. And just again, given the location to Main Street and how that walking distance to the commercial, the limits, is all of the factors that we looked at and why we would make a recommendation for it.
Sounds to me like the pink bubble bus is the problem.
I think it's the houses that can sleep 10 or 14 people is in an R1, I think is more the problem than the R2 in this little pocket, in my opinion. I agree.
Yeah.
Which is not the issue at hand tonight.
My
Yeah.
thinking is that based on code, based on thorough analysis by staff, that I'd like to make the motion that we approve this, and that when it goes to city council, they can evaluate the emotional repeal of this issue.
I'll second that.
Is that an official motion?
That's an official motion.
We have a motion by Jim and a second by Tim. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is public hearing 5D, request Z2107, request by Yvonne Planner, owner to 1, consider a request for voluntary annexation and requested zoning of multi-family residential for approximately 10 acres of land out of the Adamo survey number 123, abstract number 1714, located at 701 West Lido. Entertain a motion to open the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
By Tim, second by Jim. Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed?
Is it Z2106 or 07?
7. Did I say 6?
No.
We don't have a consideration on for that, an action item under 6. I just noticed that. But I don't see Yvonne here. Yvonne, do you want to make the presentation, Jason?
Yes, Ms. Kleiner is not going to attend this
Okay.
meeting tonight. I have been speaking with her for a couple of months now. So a little background on Ms. Kleiner's property. She was part of the Area 6A, 6B annexation plan that the city had implemented along Post Oak. She opted out of that annexation, was not going to be part of that. Since then, her septic system has failed. So currently she is pumping her septic tank monthly and having that waste hauled off. There's existing utilities directly adjacent to her, and the city is under obligation to further extend those utilities down West Live Oak. This is a donut hole in our city, so we could not control any type of development that was in there. So at this time, Ms. Kleiner was just asking for annexation so that she could connect to city utilities and not have to continue to pump her septic tank. This represents an opportunity for the city to fill in that gap, bring her in under the city's city limit as originally desired. So staff supports this and recommends approval. So there is no future land use change as part of this request. The property is shown as R3. Ms. Kleiner does not have any plans to develop at this point. So she just stated that she would be fine with whatever zoning district would meet the future land use plan. And in a desire to kind of speed her process along, we didn't recommend any changes at that time. She's adjacent to R3, which would be the recommended zoning. So if you have any other questions, I'd be glad to answer those for you.
If anyone here would like to make any comments on this application?
No, sir. Sorry.
Oh, no, we're not on that one. We're not on that one yet. All right. I entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Motion by Tim,
A second.
second by Jeff. Any discussion?
I move that we
All in
approve it as.
favor, aye?
Aye.
So there's not an action item number on here, so I guess we're just gonna say action item number 6F. We'll make it G,
Or you can make it, what is it?
because there isn't
C,
one on here.
it should be
K for
C1.
Whatever, to recommend this. So Jason's already made his
She's
comments.
2107 is her.
Yeah, we don't have her on here. So,
2117.
2107.
yeah,
I move we approve it as presented.
all right.
Second that.
Any discussion? All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, so then let's go to action item number 6D, which is consider site plan number 2108, a request by Mark Cornett with Cornett Engineering for a preliminary plat of the Allstott Estates subdivision located at 318 East College. Mark? And just let all of y'all know, I know some of y'all signed up forms to speak on this. This isn't a public hearing, it's just a site plan approval, so we're not going through the same process we just recently did. So hopefully Mark's comments will answer most of your questions. If you have burning questions afterwards, I will see if we have time to take those questions. Hopefully we will be able to answer most of what you have. Mark.
Call water, Mark.
Mark Cornett with Cornett Engineering here in Fredericksburg. I actually wasn't prepared to give a presentation, so I'm really here to answer questions.
I can do an overview if you'd like, Mark. I mean,
Whatever you want, because I don't know the consistency of.
no, I don't know who the old owner is. This is, if you're looking at the screen, the southeastern corners, the ETJ, there's that old church out there. The road continues up from the cemetery. It's kind of a private drive that goes back in that area. Is that it? In the end of Center and Morrison College, that's what that bounds is. So the applicant, he's proposing single-family residential development subdividing this property. You can see the large lot. There's a small building or the existing home on that. Thank you, Mark. They're going to keep that lot, and then they're going to extend Center Street to the dead-end cul-de-sac there. Should the church ever subdivide, they're providing some future right-of-way, and then we can gather that. That would make the connection from College over up to Morse. Yes, and then they're also giving some future right-of-way down along College Street for that future extension, so that when other properties subdivide in the area. Well, ultimately, they're looking at 23 single-family residential homes. There is one detention lot at the southeast corner of the property. Staff has reviewed this for fire access. So the homes will access off of Morse on the front, on the top. Center Street will access those homes on the north of those. And then all of the other homes will be accessed by the new cul-de-sac or street, Allstott Drive. We looked at we have not finished up the engineering and detention. Obviously, we haven't gone through construction plans. This is just a preliminary plat. If that should be approved tonight, then we'll go through engineering and construction review. At that point, if they build that, then they'll come back for final platting. They could also final plat prior to building those improvements, but they would have to post a fiscal financial certainty to be accepted by council. So like I said, 20 plus additional homes in the area on that acreage. So if you'll have any specific questions, I can go into a little more detail. Mark can handle some of those.
I wanted to kind of point out, I was trying to figure out the smallest lot is, I thought it was 9,005. But 10,000, and the larger lots are 20,000 square feet, 35,000 square feet. And so.
Yes, all are one.
All are one, yes, sir. And we played with numerous layouts, but with the topography and with the streets that were there, the owners, they've had this for 5 years, and they really actually grew it. We were actually much smaller lots at one time, and then kind of to be more consistent with the neighborhood, this turned out, and we're actually very proud of it. It's working out really well. We have existing utilities. There's a city water line here, sewer line here, so we'll be tying all that together, and then there's really 2 drainages, and I think this is the future, potential
I don't know if it's Morse Street or what it's gonna dogleg up, but the city owns this right away to extend across the creek and on back around to Cape Creek Road. I'll be glad to answer questions.
Is this part of will it be is there plan for it to be a subdivision like the preserve was, or is,
It will not be gated and
but not gated, but a restricted, like, you know, how the preserve
at
came
this
in and-
point, no. They
Just
want
city.
R1
Just
lots,
city
city
R1
R1
lots.
lots. There will not even be an HOA. The detention pond will be it's actually going to be very small and it'll
Okay.
actually just be part of somebody's backyard.
So it's not a restricted
It's very
subdivision,
simple.
just, okay.
But these will be pretty high-end lots as well.
But one thing that when you look at the site plan, it is one entrance in and one entrance. I mean, one entrance only,
Well, really two. There's Morse Street.
right?
We'll widen Morse.
Okay,
And then Center Street is one. So part of this is College Street.
yeah, but
And we,
go ahead.
and we have a 30-foot access easement, which could be dedicated. There's a property here that has dedicated. This property has not, so we can't really build half a street. And really the College Street isn't on the plan to extend, but I understand North Lee is like item number 24 on the master transportation plan. In looking at that, there's some serious challenges to that.
Yeah, call it ditch.
Cemetery.
And so we are not, at this time, it'll be an access easement. They'll actually be fenced in. It'll be part of it, but if the city ever needs that for a future road, it's theirs to have. So that actually follows the water line easement. So it's really of no building loss to us because it's within an easement.
And the setbacks are measured from the easement so that if we take that over in the future, we can go. If we do build that road, that connector, you'll see that cul-de-sac will then actually connect and that will be, make that grid system itself.
Okay.
So, concerns y'all have?
Sorry,
Sorry.
Can you scroll it down, up a little bit? My house is right here.
Okay.
That's me. So this is a pond or something?
Well, right now there's an outfall through the fence there. And so we'll be releasing at that same point at existing or less flow rate. The pond will be capturing some developed runoff.
What I'm worried about, like we already get kind of, if you go down this dirt road y'all like so much, it's already kind of washed out. I'm kind of worried about that, like.
Yeah, it'll.
And I don't get this, like, so this is a street that would come right to my house.
Not now. No, this is yards. This street's not going to be extended.
Oh.
This street's not going to be extended. I mean, the legal term is it's a city easement.
Right.
But there's a lot of other things that have to happen before the city would be on that. So we're only building these streets, and the way the drainage captures only about this much of the site drains to this. It also happens to be kind of where the calculations work out. When you build yards and houses like this, and the way it's routing, it's just a very slight increase of runoff compared with the other, because they're large lots, very large lots.
Guarantee it's gonna come into my house. I promise you that. Does it now without all that
So
asphalt?
I'm his neighbor. I bought Bill Dunn's place, the 8.25 acres. And right behind him, you can't see it on there, but so that, if you don't mind, I'm here in Deposit 535 North Lee Street. So right now, he almost got water in his house this last spring in the last 3 days. Okay, I'm in here next to the cemetery at Barron's Creek's over here. All the water, you can see how it sheds different ways. Currently came and I have a pond 2 weeks ago was dry. Then we had a little spell about a week ago on a Thursday or Friday, and it got about a foot in it. Right now it's plumb full. It's about 100 by 100, and it's probably 7 foot deep with grass and runoff right now. So if you're going to take asphalt, you're going to put it in a pond. You're going to flood this guy, and you're going to flood me, and it's on the way to Barron's Creek through the cemetery. Currently, the cemetery takes all their extra dirt and they put it into the Emmels property. Y'all know Emmels have the both sides of Barron's Creek from Olive Street.
And they use that dirt to fill all the gullies. That's how much water is currently running through here, even with grass now. Another thing is, my property line is actually to there, so is his. This is my fence. We gave 25, they gave 25. It's not, and they're giving property, and they've not given, but it's lined up, and they've given 25. So these are 50 foot all the way to Travis, and you know where it ends right there. So how is that gonna stay straight here? It almost seems like it's, you know, it's just gonna turn and you're gonna take another 25. If you ever build future streets, how does that work? Because right now it's the other 25, here's your 50 right here. So it's not really lining up. Not saying that the property lines line up. I don't know, but looking at right here, it looks like their property line for me comes to here. So if you got this right, this is already done because I just bought this. So this is all done to the city in this. So if you ever wanted to, you're good there with the exception of him. But how do you? The map currently shows this Moore Street coming all the way to about, well, they're out there on your city map.
Yeah,
That would mean to me that that's a lot wider. So something's not looking right.
yeah, and we'll have to take it on a case by case basis. And I'm not an engineer, so.
But Mark is.
But Mark is, so from the city standpoint, we will get as much right away as we can. I can't say it'll be 10 from this guy and 50 from here. It'll kind of be dependent on who goes first and what we get. At that point, we start to line up where we can. I don't know that going all the way down to the cemetery, making that connection is going to happen anytime soon, but we do want to plan for it for future development. But we could definitely make the connection up to Morris and back through College. Of course, that depends on the church property going. As far as the runoff and drainage, I can tell you at this point, this subdivision, it's not going to fix it for you. Their detention pond is not going to be designed to cure your drainage issues, but they are required to be below. They cannot increase or channelize or add to that. So it needs to be the same or less. Now,
That's
if we
in 100 year or 500 or
5 to 10 to 25.
we need to go to 500. Everybody's taking their hundreds to 500.
there is
This
a,
man was this close to getting water in his house with the current rain. My pond's full. Pavement's gonna push the water into that pond faster. If you have a 500-year flood, you're gonna flood us both.
well, again, there is some push to change on how engineering is handling those classifications just because of the changing weather patterns we're seeing. If the future road is connected though and comes around, you'll actually want that connection because that's at the point where the detention pond will outfall into the street. At that point, we can kind of channelize that through curb and gutter and keep it, kind of from draining on y'all. So
On my concerns of water, right now, you're soaking up water with grass and you're fixing to pave and you're putting a little pond, it's gonna have a small outfall. It's gonna come out of there like a fire hose. And it's gonna be coming with velocity straight to his house and across. And I already have a road. I got plenty of culverts. Got a big pond. It's full just from the rain we got. And that wasn't anywhere near 100-year rain y'all just got, was it? This last
No,
3
no,
days.
it was not. Part of the problem with this property, which is all the Cardinal soils, are hydraulic soils group C. And believe it or not, the hydraulic soils group Cs actually mimic almost a real heavy residential development because they're on, and that goes back to the SCS soils map. So part of the problem is this property is sandy soil with red clay. And the sandy soil is all washed off.
Yeah, the water's running. But we're just concerned about flooding. We know that someday the city's gonna expand the road. That's not an issue. I was more than happy with everything the city did for us and give the 25 or sign off. And I'm good with all the, development's gonna happen, but we need to see where the water's going. This less than 100-year rain we got almost went into his house with nothing there. As soon as you put pavement, it's coming faster. So I just consider that. And now you're engineering and hydraulic, I get that. But
to answer your question on the roadway, we are dedicating the easement, which this does actually line up. We have the same surveyor that did these lots.
Okay.
So we are lined up perfectly.
So is that 50 foot now?
No, this is 30. The other would have to come from the church.
So then this is ours 25 and their 25's over here. So that's the center of the road. So it's just gonna dog. I mean, I don't care. I'm just asking, if something didn't,
Well, this side by the Journey Church hasn't been dedicated. So the center of the road is this old lot, this old outlot. Line.
okay, so then you don't have, the line that's missing on this side. Is that right? The black line, the property line.
Yeah, I don't know where that property line is.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So looking at this, it looks like it's for that side, but if it's for this side, then it's gonna line that straight. Right. But the main issue is the water, guys. If you could check that, because we're gonna get flooded.
Yes, Jen.
May I address?
Thank you. Commissioner.
Mr. Cornett, I understand that you are a Fredericksburg and you're a Fredericksburg resident, but could you share with us who your client is for this project?
Yes, Fred Heimer and Craig, Fred Heimer's the owner, but Craig Holmig is one of the partners. He lives in the Stonewall community. He had to babysit grandkids tonight. He could not make it. And so he apologized for that. Fred is in the Broncos.
Okay.
He called me on the way over here. He wasn't able to make it.
Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, on your responses to the city's concerns with engineering, you CC'd him, and it looks like he was part of a venture capital group. Is Mr. Heimer and Mr. Holmig, are they the two sole applicants and owners for this project, or are there additional investors? Okay. Hi, I'm Janice Dotz. I live at 505 East Morse, and if you could scroll just a little bit further up, Shelby.
Madam Chair, I thought this was not going to be
Yeah,
a public
this isn't a
hearing. This is
public
not a
hearing.
public hearing.
Okay,
This is
so
a different
when was the
environment.
appropriate time to address the
Public
commission?
hearing.
Okay, and when is that going to happen?
There is no public hearing because
It's just a
of the
plat.
fact that this is they're doing this in appropriate zoning. All we do is see the plat because they are doing it in appropriate.
And right
zoning.
now, that's zoned to be an R1.
It's zoned to be a R1, so all we're doing is looking to make sure they're applying, that they're
So
doing
what,
it.
so as homeowners and property owners along North Elk
Uh-huh.
and East Morse and College and Center Street, what recourse do we have to lodge any kind of potential issues or problems that we see with this plat as currently
I think
drawn?
he's sitting
You can
right
talk
over
to
there.
I mean, you can talk to the city staff.
Who do we talk to?
As long, you can talk to city staff, but as long as it meets the city
So-
guidelines, then you're okay.
If I could, just for a
Yeah,
second, kind
go
of
ahead.
get
Sure,
everybody
Jason.
Yeah.
back together.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions or concerns, I'll be glad to meet with you on this. City's hands are kind of tied when it comes to plating. The state legislature has made plating ministerial in nature, which means as long as it meets the minimum lot size and the zoning and all of that, we don't do public hearings and get all of that. But we are available to discuss those issues with you. Email, shoot me if you want to meet in the office. If it's a land use issue, I would say contact me. We can kind of go over some of that. If it's actually a drainage engineering issue, you can still contact me, but we can put you in touch with the city engineer to go over those things. But ultimately, there's no public comment where you can protest, and we have to hit kind of those numbers. As long as it meets the regs, even if everybody here hated the plan, legally, we could not deny it. But again, if you want to meet and chat, I'd be glad to talk with you about that. I think we can give her a 30 seconds, small time if she has some issues. I don't want to cut her off, but
Yeah.
we
I
do
know
have
it's
to
late.
move on. So
I
No,
understand that it's
okay,
late.
we'll stay. We just want you to know that we have to just go by what the guidelines.
I understand, and I
Okay.
appreciate you saying that.
Yeah.
As also a neighbor. And Mr. Joe actually inspected my house as well.
He inspects everybody's house. Come
He's been in
on.
everybody's.
But my concern is that there has been absolutely no communication with the neighbors or the neighborhood about this project. The only communication that has happened, to my knowledge, is the denial of an offer to purchase this outright by Kathleen and Mark Bowles, who lived here at 706 North Elk. That's the only communication that's happened with this project with regard to any of the residents who will be impacted by increased traffic, increased noise. Rumor has it that East Morse was going to be the construction entrance. I have a 6-year-old son who rides his bike on East Morse. I have a 4-month-old daughter who I push in her stroller on East Morse. There are entire families who walk at night with their dogs, with their children. During the day, Mr. Smith walks by my house. Mr. Stone walks by my house. all of our neighbors are here because we have heard nothing about this project.
No, I heard one thing. It was gonna be 10 acres and 10 homes, and it was gonna be gated, and the entrance was gonna be on center. And this is 4 or 5 years ago. Were you involved with this project back then?
I've been involved with it since they purchased it about 5 years ago.
Okay, what
and there's
happened to
been
the 10
about-
and 10?
Well, there's been about 10 layouts.
Oh, okay.
At one time, we had like
Okay.
30 lots.
Okay, so it's moved along. Yeah, we'd like to meet Mr. Heimer. I think is he New Braunfels? Okay.
And that, my concern is that there has been absolutely no communication with and I understand he is under no legal obligation to do so unless he requests a zoning change, and then it's only adjacent properties. But I think morally and ethically, this much change to a very quiet part of Fredericksburg needs to be discussed with the people that it will impact. And I will leave it at that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jenny.
I've got a quick question, if I could, more of the specifics of it. What's the minimum square foot per home going to be? Has that been decided yet? Or what about the topography? Will it go still like sloping off, or will it all be raised up and flat across?
No, it's gonna follow the same topography. Obviously, the street will come down. This is at about 5% grade. And the street will be almost flat because it's buck and grade. And we obviously have to tie in existing grades at the bottom. So a lot of it will be relatively unchanged, obviously, except for the building labs.
So the water on center, on that street coming, the topography now goes straight down there through the church and not necessarily our way. It's not gonna get channeled to the pond, correct? It's gonna stay.
So the water from here this way will actually get carried in a drainage easement and out toward where it goes now.
Okay.
And then the water that already goes to this corner will go to the corner. It's actually technically a little bit less of amount of water will go there now as far as area is concerned. But, most of it we can capture at the end of the street and carry it down here. And that way in the future, if the street were extended, it could be captured in.
Well, I get what he said when he said if and when they ever extend North Lee Street, you'll have curb and gutter to channel water, but that's if and when 10 or 20 years from now. If you decide there's no tax base over there. We're outside the city, right? So until you annex it, right? So that water is gonna go where curb and gutter should have held it back down to the little creek at the concrete culvert there. Travis is gonna come straight to us like fire hose.
Well, again,
Just please look at that. I know you.
we
guys
are going to
engineers.
look at
That's
that. I can't make that clear enough. If they go to our city engineer with their numbers and they don't meet, it is not approved at that point. I mean, we really at this point are just looking at the layout and design. Technical review will come at a later date.
Where it ends, the enters there, that's higher elevation.
Oh, yes. Yeah, there's 15 feet of fall from here to here.
Yeah, all that water up there is higher.
The drainage area starts actually on your lots up here and drains down. I mean, the high point is right here on this house and it actually drains through the property. But these lots will be as very similar, if not larger than most of the adjoining lots. So it's very compatible, if not larger lots than most of the adjoining along College. and Center.
What's the estimate of the square footage? You have to have some kind of
Of the lot of the house,
guesstimate about
they'll be sold to
of
individuals.
the houses, of the homes that you put on.
There's no restrictions on R1 lots in the
But do
city.
you have any, is there a projection?
No.
It's not a
So-
They'll be
subdivision,
selling the
We're-
lots.
Their purpose is to sell lots.
Well, there's not a builder that's developing. It's just buy your own, build your own, on your own lot, figure builder.
They have not made that, they're not builders. They haven't, to my knowledge, they haven't contracted out. We're still talking about construction of roadways. and infrastructure.
What about the power lines? Have you got any designs on what the power lines will come in? Or
It'll be all underground. 67 electric.
All right. Y'all got any more questions down here, guys?
Again, if
Anybody
y'all have more specific questions, please contact me in my office. I'll be glad to sit with y'all and go over all the details.
All right.
And if we could meet with Mr. that would be great.
Y'all have any other questions? All right, anybody ready to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the plat as presented.
Motion by Jim, second by Tim. Any other discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed? All right. Thank you all for your
Thank you
comments and do
thank you for the
contact.
short presentation.
Do contact Jim.
Somebody was asking about the developers. Holding is here.
Yeah.
Greg lives in Stonewall.
Greg lives in Stonewall, so you know, one of the developers is here.
All right, item number 6E, I believe we're not going to be hearing tonight, Jason.
Yes, so in your packet, the next item for 707 Highway Street, it was originally slated for review by this board because they were asking for townhomes. The townhomes require CUP. During review and of the project, they had made it known they were going to do a short-term rentals. So we told them you had too many units. They redrew that, got it down to what it would need to be. So they're no longer doing townhomes, which means it no longer needs to be reviewed by this group. So we're pulling this item from the agenda.
All right. The next item is action item number 6F. Consider site plan 2105 request by Whitney Cox with Mustard Design for site plan approval of an office project.
Pretty quick, staff has been reviewing this proposed office building with the developer. We didn't have any comments. They addressed all of our concerns from detention to zoning to screening and parking. So fire marshal's good. So we're recommending approval of the proposed site plan.
So moved.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, the other item we have on the agenda is to approve the minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
A motion by Jim, second by Jeff. Any discussion? All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed? Jason, you have anything else?
No, I just want to let everybody know that we are moving forward with a couple of open meetings or listening sessions, the 24th and 25th of May. It's going to be regarding short-term rentals. We'll let you guys know. We're not asking y'all to attend, but if y'all want to attend, I will be posting a notice of possible quorum, just so everybody can be involved.
Great.
Uh,
Where? Here?
Pioneer Pavilion. We're expecting a large crowd. We are breaking it up into 2 days. We're gonna try and discuss issues from the owners, operators, permitting side. That is gonna be on the 24th. There should be an advertisement in the paper on the 25th for the general public. So all the folks, I was hoping they would stay, but all the folks that had concerns about the rezoning case, they will be, our goal is to try and get letters to everybody within 200 feet of an STR. So we're working on that list.
All 800 of them, huh?
Well, there's some duplicate folks in there. There's a lot of STRs near each other, so we're trying to whittle it down. But our goal is to get as much public input as possible before we consider any type of amendments or changes. I know everybody has thoughts and concerns on it, and we want to make sure that all of those are addressed. I know I've met with several developers that are doing STRs, and some of those folks have some really good ideas to help us regulate it. So we definitely want to meet with that group as well. And then we can kind of also coordinate the permitting issue. We have kind of a backlog. I know that's not been ideal for some of those folks. So we just want to get input from as many people as we can before we kind of sit down and start looking at, some options. So.
Will you be live streaming it?
No, unfortunately, Pioneer Pavilion is a little short on tech. So we are going to be putting out a survey, different surveys for different people. Some of the questions obviously are going to overlap with the two groups. So we'll have that. Again, we're notifying all the operators. They will notify their owners, because that's kind of how we've been discussing with them, the management companies. And then, like I said, we're working on letters for the adjacent landowners in case they don't see it in the paper or they kind of miss that. But we're looking for as much feedback as possible. Again, there'll be a small presentation from myself, just kind of what are the current regs, where they can go, so everybody understands that. And it truly is going to be a listening session. Your complaints, your concerns, we'll take all of that in. We'll have the survey, and then we'll start presenting that information to council and get some direction on where we go from there. So
how long will those be?
We're actually gonna do two times per day, so that we can, if you can't make one, you can make another, kind of break that up. So I believe they are 11 to 2 and 3 to 6. So that way, if you have to work or you can't make one, you can make the other. So we want to do it as much as possible. And then again, we'll have press releases, things on our website. You can always call in and emails.
So just a suggestion, either in the letters going to the adjacent landowners and through some public format like the newspaper, we probably ought to publish the actual ordinance again. Because I think if there's anything in this town that people are unclear about is the actual details of that ordinance.
And I think most of that is the ordinance is a one size fits all. And so when people come in, I mean, we saw it tonight, there's STRs come in all forms and fashions. So I think that's one of the issues for staff is how can we make it easier for people to understand those regs? How can we define what those STRs are, what those requirements? So we would definitely be publishing that ordinance again.
Shelley's put a great cheat sheet on the city website that kind of breaks it down, which would be great to send out. I mean, I feel like you've broken it down pretty simply where the, average person can understand versus the other version.
Yeah, Shelby's done a great job of, here's the kind of nuts and
She
bolts.
has, she's
And then,
highlighted the main points and got it down to like less than a page.
yeah, where we have trouble is when, like I said,
The lawyers get a hold of it.
leave Daniel out of this.
No, I'm not gonna leave Daniel out of it. He's still here. Now, the other thing I want to ask you, you said a while ago that you were gonna post this as a meeting for us,
Well,
for a quorum.
what we'll do is we'll do it for city council and for P and Z and ZBA and historic review board, because
You're not gonna tell those people who we are you?
Oh, I think they
That's all-
know.
that's all
We're on
right.
TV right now, sir. So.
Well, I'm a
No,
little
we-
concerned about that.
If y'all want to go and we don't have a quorum and you're generally interested, we want to give you that opportunity,
perfect.
to speak as a citizen, not
Certainly.
just a board member. So we will post a notice of quorum for all of the boards and council in
Thanks.
case we get 3 or 4 there at one given time.
Okay, thank you.
Jason, has the city thought about holding meetings here instead of at the pavilion?
No, because we had not had our contract when we were setting those dates, wasn't part of the contract. I think for the first portion, we'd probably just do it at the Pioneer Pavilion, let people get those.
The only reason I raised that is with video capability that we have now.
Broadcast it.
To be able to broadcast the YouTube for these people who want to watch, and then more people are going to be able to sit and understand what was going on in this facility than.
Well, and we thought of that. That's why we will also have an additional Zoom meeting set up. So if those that can't attend, we'll do that, and and we'll do that separately. I think if council decides to, where we have our future meetings, if that's here, if that's somewhere else, if it is here, then we can work with, because there'll be some, this is just the first step of public input.
I think everybody knows that we're having council meetings here at least until June. And I'm sure that with this issue as being as pertinent to so many people in this community, I think that we can talk that if there's an additional charge to having to use this facility, I think that we could probably find the money in the budget to make sure that we could include as many people as possible.
Right. And I definitely think once we get, like I said, we're going to have these 2 kind of listening sessions. We'll kind of report, my thought is report to council on what were the survey questions, what kind of information came out of that. Then at that point, we kind of get together and make some decisions as staff or how we go forward. And then we'll have another series of open houses. At that point, I think a facility like this would be better.
All right, thank you.
I see KK, she wants us out of here.
All right, anybody got anything else? I entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Jim, have a second
I'll
by?
second
I'll second. Good, so much.
Y'all did it
All-
last time too. 3 months in a row. I like
All
it.
in favor?
Aye, aye, aye.
All
We're usually
all
really bad.
opposed? Anybody opposed? Nope. Motion carries.
All in favor.
Thank y'all,
Aye.
everybody, for coming.
No, thank you.
Why would I just ask that? When you talk about 11 to 36, like you do a 5 or 10 minute presentation and just open it up to you. So if it's just hypothetically, if you were here,